Mm.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. All right, we're just a minute or so ahead of schedule, so we'll give it just a second. Dawn, if you want to turn on your camera, you certainly may.
It says I can't because the host has stopped it.
What? That's terrible of me. How could I do that? How could I do such a thing? Let's see if I could fix
It's Zoom when Zoom likes to update and update and update.
and then they change where the things are. And okay, maybe if I make you co-host, let's see if that helps.
Oh, I got it. I did it. There I
am. Awesome. Okay, let's what do I want to do? Gallery, does that work? Yeah, I guess we can do that. And then we can
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, this is so fun, isn't it? Watching me look at my Zoom. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, and Veronica's here too.
Veronica's here too. Veronica, I don't know if you want to minimize yourself or just have your lovely photograph there.
Don't minimize themselves. I'm kidding.
Don't minimize yourself. Be as big as you are. Claim your space. That's what we're here for.
So if you want me to not show up on the screen, Sam, go ahead and switch to speaker view.
Okay.
Because I am going to be muted the whole time, and so it'll just swap between the two of you.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. I'm loving learning this too. Every week we all get a little teaching moment.
A little Zoom tutorial. Yeah, they do change it quite a bit. So it
They
is.
do.
And
I've had clients be like, I can't get on. Give me 5 minutes. It's making me enter my thing and my thing and my thing.
oh, and then you get in the authentication loop. We've texted
gosh, the authentication loop.
Oh, here's my 4-digit code. No, that's not your 4-digit code. You need to authenticate it. No, I'm authentic. I promise. Please let me in. Oh.
It's not you. It's not you.
No, right? All right, everybody. Everybody, welcome to our weekly Facebook Live. I'm here with my friend Dawn Montefusco. We're going to be talking about cracking your resistance code. What I would love to do is start with our breathing, right? Start with centering into this present moment. It's the only one we've got. You're the only you there is. The only time is now. So letting your belly go really poochy soft. Soften your gaze and your jaw and your hands. Soften your harsh judgments of yourself and others. Soften into all the softness. All right, you ready? Let's inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's so good.
It's so good. It's like a little 35-second nap.
You're way ahead of Andrew Huberman, just so you know.
Oh, who's Andrew Huberman? Is he doing it too?
He's the new guy on the scene on YouTube that does all the life hacks, and he's a neuroscientist. So he gives away information for free versus teaching it at Harvard or wherever he teaches. And he said, I've after all these years, I figured out a 3-minute way to reduce my anxiety, and then he taught that breathing. Like,
there you go. And sometimes people ask me where I got it, and honestly, I've been doing it like since the 80s. I genuinely don't remember where I got it from. I know
it is your breath. I just only know it is your breath, your breathing.
Yeah, no, I didn't invent it though. I learned it from someone. I just don't know who. And I've heard Dr. Andrew Weil uses it in his work, but I've never read any of Dr. Weil's work, so that's so yeah. Well, anyway, welcome everyone here. Beth is here, Lucy and Joe. We've got, of course, Veronica and Lucy monitoring the chat and the questions. So if you've got something you want to ask me or Dawn, this is your big chance. But it's lovely to see you all here.
All coming on now, which is fun. I know there's always a lag. you know, a couple minutes. I don't know about you, but for my weekly show, it's like, I'm just going to talk for like 4 or 5 minutes and then everybody's there.
Yeah. We usually jump into it pretty quick.
What part of California are you in? Let me just go there.
Well, I'm in the part of California now known as Connecticut.
No shoot.
I moved about 6-7 months ago. I moved to Connecticut.
Yeah.
I would have loved to still be in California, but
Oh
the
my
place I
gosh.
was living in for 10 years, the building got sold and turned into an Airbnb.
That happened to me too. That's one of the reasons I came here. Yeah, I was like, well, guess I'm moving.
I guess I'm moving. So, but it was great. We've been able to buy a house, and I'm right near my sister and my niece.
Oh, that's nice. Connecticut is so cool. You know,
so cool.
You know how Keith Richards says it, and I know this because a friend of mine actually opened for the Stones once. Not that I care. He says, "Oh, Connecticut," he calls it Connecticut, and I've always thought of it now as Connecticut. I'm like, I guess it's the English way of saying Connecticut.
I will say it does look a lot like England.
Yes.
It's no wonder that they named everything New York, New London, New Manchester, New.
Yep. New Hampshire.
But no, it's delightful, and it's just spring here. Like in 48 hours, it went from.
Yes, it does that. I lived in Vermont for 5 years, so I was a New Yorker for 20. So you know, I've been there, and that's so crazy. I didn't know that 6 or 7 months ago. I moved here 6 months ago, and I've never been. I've never lived in Southern California, so this is exciting. I'm in San Diego.
So we swapped. We balanced.
We had to balance the earth, or at least the country.
Exactly. So Dawn, Justine's already got a question, but Dawn, go ahead and tell us a little bit about cracking the resistance code. Like what are we up to here?
Yeah. So I'm a high performance transformational life coach, and I have an MFA, Master's of Fine Arts in creative writing, and I've taught writing in college, and I've taught all kinds of poetry stuff. And as I aged, I noticed that I stopped writing, and I noticed I was scared of creativity. I was like, what am I afraid of? Like, where did this come from? Where did all this fear come from? And so, of course, we would love Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, you know, the grandfather of resistance. You know, he's amazing too. I mean, when I say too, I mean, he actually donated cases of books once for one of my summits. I mean, the guy couldn't be on the summit. I know, nice guy, right? Who does that?
So good.
So, anyway, so I've studied this thing called resistance, and his philosophy and book is genius, and it's an amazing read. And I went deeper into the psychology and the brain, and I wanted to know, what is this? Because a lot of people have told me I'm resilient, I'm resourceful, and I pivot like a mofo, right? They're like where'd you get this? And I'm like, well, you know, I said, I'm actually terrified, like all the time.
Yeah.
And people were, what? I was like, oh yeah, no, I was a rock climber. I did this, but I mean, everything I do, it's like almost like, and then I do something. And then I realized it's because it's the unknown, you know, which we know it's uncertain. And of course, writing is uncertain. So the more that I taught writing, and the more that I start studying my clients and thinking, well, how am I going to get them out of this thing called resistance? I started to actually study a whole bunch of things. And I came up with a book because they said, well, could you write this down? Because you're like one of the only people that I've ever worked with that actually gets me to write. Now, part of that I want to say is because I have a program called oneshortbook.com. I don't like long form in terms of writing it. I love reading it. There's nothing wrong with long form. It's beautiful. I have hundreds of books, but I just don't like writing long form. It doesn't click for me, you know? So one is my professors in graduate school told me I would never make any money as a writer because I was a poet and I like to write short stories in short form. And they literally said to me, you know, I mean, this is back in the 90s. They said to me, you know, if you aren't going to write a long book or a novel or something, you know, then you can teach and make money that way. And I almost feel like the universe has actually, you know, just kind of moved in my favor as I committed to short form. Then there's short reads. And then I noticed that you can become a bestseller in short reads way faster than in Kindle. You'll be like bestseller in 3 categories in short reads and like 517,643rd in Kindle.
Interesting.
Right? So and then I put together the short book program, and because my first short book did well, and I made a bunch of money because I had an email list, and I mostly just attracted the right people to me. And then when my clients got in there and I just said, well, this is how it's done, I personally would hire a publishing coach, but if you wanted to do it on your own, it would take some time, but you can. And then they started hitting bestseller. And I was like, it is so much easier. So part of the resistance I think is this, well, this is my belief system, is an antiquated belief system that we have to write a long book in order to be respected as a writer. And by the way, your first poetry book that you put up, like, I remember I bought it 6 or 7 years ago. And when I bought it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like 30 pages or something. And I read those poems over and over and over and over and over again. And I was like, these are awesome. And she's a New York Times real book best-selling author that I've read all of her books. But I was so impressed with the fact that you just put it out there, right? And so I became very passionate, very, very passionate, and started to recommend people keep their books 100 pages or less, which then relaxed people. And then they wound up understanding the storyline. Mostly I work with service-driven entrepreneurs who want to talk about their message or their struggle, but they want to do it in a creative way. Because I say, if you can Google it, it's not a book, right? If you can Google the information, it's not a book. But when you put your personal story in it in a certain way, you know, with some tension and with good setting and dialogue, and then you kind of drift it in there, you do that with your work. Then we're getting the information from a person who we trust in a certain way, and that makes it totally different.
Okay, so, there's so much good stuff in here, Dawn. I want to pause for a second and just sort of unpack a few of the things that you've said. One is this thing that I see with highly creative people all the time, where we get an idea and then instantly freak ourselves out about how big and overwhelming it is, right? It's like, you know, I always say, it's like we have this idea of like, oh, I want to redo the whole house. And we get the vision of the whole house completely redone. And then we're completely overwhelmed, because where would you even start with a project that big, right? So this is why I'm such a big fan of the 15 minutes a day thing. Like, well, start with some baby steps, you know, and you don't have to write a 900-page historical novel. You don't have to create $1 million business. You don't have to create an international fashion brand. You don't have to garden the entire back 40. You know, you can start with a couple of houseplants. You can start with, well, let's see if I can sell 1 or 2 of these. Let's see if I can get anybody interested in this idea at all. And it's so valuable because, first of all, it lessens the investment. I mean, this is one of the things I see that people get really frightened of. And it's a legitimate concern of like, I don't want to put a ton of time and energy into something and then not have it work out. Sure. Oh yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Sorry, speaking of working in the house, there's some people here working in the house. I got cats coming in and out. I got people.
2023, man. We get to hang. Yeah.
We're juggling. So this idea of like, oh yeah, make it just a tiny little thing. You know, the first book of poems came around completely, you know, almost inadvertently. I had started writing them and sending them out as emails, and then I had some people saying like, hey, are they collected somewhere there? Like in a book, could I get them? And I was like, no, but I guess. And I remember turning them into a PDF. Now, I don't know if y'all remember this, but cast your mind back to 2009, 2010. Making a PDF was a giant pain in the ass. It was so hard.
There was no export change. No, it was.
Oh, no.
It was crazy.
Oh, it was so hard. So very frustrating, steep learning curve, very frustrating. But I did it. I sent it out, and I had to gather all my courage to send it out to my email list. And I think I priced it at $4.95. I think you can still get it for $4.95. And I was like, okay. And I didn't want to do it. And I had that pit in my stomach feeling. I felt nauseous. I felt nauseated. I felt unwell. I felt like this is a terrible idea. I felt super vulnerable. I was like, this is going to be awful. And then I thought, Samantha, you teach a class called Get It Done.
Yeah.
You have to do this. Like, shit.
Totally.
So I pressed send, and then I immediately went out and did something else, so I wouldn't be like watching to see if anybody bought it. And when I checked the next morning, 2 people had bought it, a woman I barely knew and a guy from my church choir.
Aww.
My mother hadn't even bought a copy. It's such a bummer.
And you didn't have like a big email list then, or you probably did, or did you not send it to them?
No, I did. I sent it to my list. It was a couple of thousand. I mean, no, it wasn't huge.
Okay, yeah.
You know, it was huge to me at the time. I had just started.
Yeah. Well, we know the difference now and the turnover and all that stuff.
Right. But it gave me a start. It gave me a foothold. And then I figured out that
they put you in the algorithm in Amazon and gave you an author central page.
Correct. And I also realized not too long after that I completely screwed up the table of contents, and there was like all these errors and stuff. So I was like, okay, version 2.0 director's cut, like here we go.
So I did the same thing. I swear I did the same thing for my very first book on Kindle. Yeah.
So start thinking to yourself, like, how can I, even if you're not a writer, whatever it is you're thinking about doing, that you are, but you're kind of hitting the gas and the brakes at the same time, because you really want to do it, but you're also freaking yourself out for whatever reason. How can you thin slice it? Like, how can you make it tinier and tinier? Let's look at some of these questions. Justine says, is there any correlation between accidents with injuries defeating our best intentions? Any strategies for those of us who are prone to injuries, giving us extended timeouts? How to reframe said downtime for creativity and growth?
Yes. So actually what's interesting is, the whole concept of cracking the resistance codes, how to break through the fear of uncertainty and write your book, but it really could be, and live your life, or, paint your paintings rather. The first part, it's in 3 parts: know yourself, know your enemy, and know divine forces. So that would be know your enemy. So and know yourself, right? So resistance is, and I do recommend both books. Actually, I should probably just be pimping my book, but there is a lot to be said. This is a short book, by the way. Look at his paragraphs. I just want to show you this because those are 2 pages, 2 paragraphs of one of his chapters, but they just bumped it up with the size of the book to give it a spine. So one of the things that I realized is that in the military, they call it an F3 response: fight, flight, or freeze. And I know that there's more in psychology now, like fawn, and but we are just going straight to the basics. And so we wonder, where did we get our resistance style from? And I specifically tell a quick story about growing up in the Bronx and how I literally had to tape weapons to my body in order to get to school safe. And my father he was a vigilante, and my cousin was a cop, and they would sit and teach me bizarre things of how to get out of situations that were dangerous. So my first resistance style is flight. So I will find myself in another part of the house doing other things. People call it procrastination, but in actuality, I'm avoiding what's dangerous. Now, you might go back in time and see, did you get a lot of attention when you hurt yourself? Was that a way for you to get away from or maybe because you didn't want to go to school, or maybe there was something that scared you and you noticed when you fell down or something happened, you didn't have to face whatever it is. I mean, you might be able to track it down to anything from going to a wedding to, showing up at having to be on stage, or having to face a family member with something, or a conversation you don't want. But we find that when something scares us or we don't know the outcome, we've already built up a specific resistance style. And I go over the top 10 resistance styles and symptoms in here, and how to track it for yourself. And what happened between, I know Sam knows this, between 0 and 8 years old, that taught you that when there's danger, which the saber-tooth brain, right? The reptilian brain is like, oh, there's saber-tooth tigers. Something taught you that falling down and getting hurt is a way for you to keep yourself safe from something. And I do this with all my clients get really annoyed with me because I go, ooh, look at that resistance style. Your car always breaks down, is that, and then they go, oh my gosh, my car always breaks. Like if you track it, you can almost see what mine is, not just flight, but getting sick. So I'll catch a cold and then I'll maybe I'm burnt out, whatever. But there's something that I can then say, wait, whoa. And then the trick is, can you do a little bit anyway? So you shift the pattern. So there's resistance patterns that we want to understand that have started a long time ago. There's also saber-toothed tigers everywhere right now. You know, the social media is one big saber-toothed tiger coming at you in different ways. So there's also the modern world that will add to overwhelm. And thus, when you get overwhelmed, maybe you fall over. When I get overwhelmed, I get tired or depressed or sick. You know, so there's a couple of different things at play that actually keep you from doing your best work. Although I think the big O, which is the name of one of my chapters, which is what Sam just talked about, overwhelm, I think that's, you know, one of the most, oh gosh, insidious, is it the right word? You know, like,
yeah,
it just pervades, it like comes in so much because we're comparing ourselves to hundreds, well, thousands of people. And then often people will say to me, but what do I do with the book? What if my cousin's sister sees it? What if this? I'm like, you didn't even write that page yet. You know, like, come on back, come on back, come on back. The body naturally wants to go to see, where is all the danger going to come? And then what is that resistance style that holds you back? And one of the things that I figured out by going back and telling this little story is one of the greatest codes my father taught me to crack, because they actually did teach me how to break in or out of a house or a building, because the fire codes back then were terrible, and predators and even teachers, you know, you had to get out if someone locked you in. There's all these things that they taught me, like almost like a thief. Right, cracking a code like a you know, a diamond thief in the movies where they come down in the museums and they have to know all the little details.
Dawn Montefusco, cat burglar.
Yes. Well, actually, I do talk about cat burglar, like the whole history of cracking a code, and you know, even in a little, obviously condensed way. But I realize the thing that the cracking the code is the mindset, is in the mind. So the resilience is what Sam teaches, and it's in the mind. Like, how do you crack your own resistance code? One of the best ways is to chunk it down to small pieces, because that's where the safety is. That's where you stay as safe as you can. And then little by little, you go forward. And I know that Sam will love this analogy. I give the analogy that if I brought you to this beautiful place with like 300 acres, food and water and a gorgeous cabin, and I said, okay, you're going to stay here for 10 days, and there's 50 pieces of gold on 300 acres, each one worth $10,000. So here's your sifter, here's all your tools, and you're going to find some of them guaranteed, but you're going to have to dig, and you're going to have to get dirty, and you don't know which way to go, and I'm not going to give you a map, and you're going to have to figure it out. Most people would hang out for 10 days to try to see if they could find that. When you're writing or doing something creative, you will hit gold, guaranteed, if you just keep going little bit by little bit. So falling down, I think I would say, yes, that is a part of resistance.
Yeah, I have another thought too, which is, you know, we are still so rooted in this Calvinistic, you know, philosophy of like, you know, that the only thing that matters is work, and you've got to work hard, and things can't come easily, and you better not take any pleasure in it because it's work.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And while, you know, that maybe holds true for some things, it does not necessarily hold true for the creative process. Yeah. And in fact, there are long stretches of the creative process where it does in fact look like nothing is happening, you know, where the field sort of has to lay fallow, where, you know, I always think of it as being in the rock tumbler. Like sometimes things have to stay in the rock tumbler for a really long time before you can have a polished gem out of it. And there is not necessarily, you know, a right timing on that. You know, there's not a normal gestation period. You know, I remember when I was, there have been a number of projects that I've worked on where I felt like, oh, I should be done with this by now. And I'm like, why do I think that? How do I know how long it takes to write a Broadway show? How do I know how long it's going to take to write this book? Every book is its own book. Absolutely. Some books happen really quickly. Some take longer. Like, so
some of them come out real easy too.
Some of them come out real easy.
And you almost feel guilty. Like someone's like, oh, how you wrote? And like, kind of did really quickly, you know. I don't want to say other things. It's like, oh my gosh, that took like a year, you know.
Right. Or it's not, or many years. I mean, so I think sometimes if you're finding yourself having these sort of fallow periods where you physically can't do very much, or you're limited in what you can do, can you take advantage of the rest time to refill your own well, you know, read books that inspire you, watch
That's
other
what
movies.
I would say, read the books that inspire you. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And that's important, by the way, reading the books. Most people will say, if you talk to any, like there's studies done where most people will say it was this book or this line or this paragraph that allowed me to either rest it out and then continue, or to have faith in myself that I would get there. But so books are very powerful. The written word is very powerful.
Definitely. And it'll make you a better writer. The more you read, the better you write.
Exactly.
That's true. Ariane says, me too. My work is always brief because people need the info without having to wade through a lot of padding. I'm seeing a trend more and more, and we've seen this coming for the last, 10 years or so of trends for shorter books. But even in fiction, I'm seeing shorter and shorter books.
Well, and the series is really the moneymaker, by the way, for everybody out there. If you can write a series of books, just like TV, right? Just like, and I actually, by the way, if you really want to study story and how to write a series of short books that are awesome, study your favorite binge. Study your favorite binge. It's the storyline. Just start, how does the person keep going? Why does the person keep going? Why would a person keep reading? But fiction series of short books right now, like, I'm like, well, I want to do that. People are buying it up like crazy.
And especially super niche. I think I've told the story before about a friend of the writing partner of a friend of mine is a well-known romance writer, but she has a pen name under which she writes mythical porn. So it's like, I don't know, unicorns and werewolves having sex. I don't know what it is, but it's made her a shit ton of money.
Yep.
And they're just short erotic fiction.
A little sex in there, a little romance. You got yourself a book. Actually, true that. I mean, if you read Save the Cat, which is, you can probably, Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, everybody. It's a screenplay book. But memoirists and anyone wanting to learn good storytelling, it's actually one of the best books about good storytelling. And he does say, if you can put a love story in the B story, if you can have any kind of love story in there, man, you got yourself a bestseller, because everybody loves a good love story.
It's so true. Let's see. Enjo says, this is awesome. I've been struggling to fill out my short books, been drawn to 3 short books rather than one longer. Don't finish reading books that read as if they were paid by the word. Well, it's so true. And I gotta say, I mean, in all love to my writer brothers and sisters, most nonfiction's books, like the first third is really good. The second third, okay. By the time you get to the last third, there's nothing there.
Right.
And I talk to people all the time, like, oh, I buy all these books and then I don't finish them. Or I send all these courses, then I don't finish them. I'm like, right, because they're boring.
Yeah.
Like they had one really good idea or a couple of really good ideas and they front loaded it there. And, but like, you're allowed to put a book down. You're allowed to say like, okay, I got what I needed to out of this book. I don't need to read it all the way to the end. You're not hurting the writer's feelings. I struggled with that for many years. I felt like I was hurting the writer's feelings if I did not finish the book, that having started it was like a sacred contract between me and the writer. That's not true. Your time is precious. You can skim it, put it away.
So true. Okay, so case in point, one of my clients wrote The Vegan Brain. She's a health coach, and she did that because as she was aging, she wanted her brain health, right? Now, I'm not a vegan. I don't actually think I'm going to be a vegan, although I eat kind of, pescatarian-ish, mostly for cholesterol reasons. But it was 40 pages, and of course she's my client. But forget about her being my client, because I didn't promise. She didn't buy a personal one-on-ones with me, so I wasn't reading all of her stuff. But I'll tell you what, it was 40 pages, and I was curious, and I read the whole thing. And it was awesome. And I learned so much about the brain, so much about her story in like a lunch hour. And I thought, I got a lot of good tips. Even though I'm not going to be a vegan, I got a lot of good tips. And of course, she has a call to action at the end, and I do too. So if you're if you want to be a coach or you have a service to offer, one of the best things about short books and Kindle is that you can have a call to action at the end to book a call or to see the person. And if I was if that was a need for me, for my brain. But she did that. She did the musical brain. And then I forget what the third one she's working on. So it's the brain series, but it's not my thing. And yet they say one of the reasons people are loving short books is because we're so inundated with information. And you know this, Sam, our brains have shrunk. It's not that we're ADHD. It's not that our attention spans are like we're wild children wanting to bounce balls. It's because we can't take in so much without feeling that like, oh my God, I've had enough already. So they're finding that short books, people are appreciating, and they'll read a short book that on a subject that they normally wouldn't read because it's long.
There's some statistic, and actually, Veronica, maybe you can make a note of this for me so I remember to do it later, because I need to find this for my new book on overwhelm. I need to find the statistic, but it has to do with the total amount of information created between, I don't know, the Middle Ages and Shakespeare's time or something. Like if we say like this was the sum total of information, and that and now then that doubled in the next 100 years. And now
it
we
compounded on itself, actually.
It's compounded on itself. So now we're like putting out as much information as that every day.
Yeah, as much as history, as all of history from here to the beginning of written time or recorded time, we're putting as much information in a day that we did since the last 50,000 years. I don't remember when recorded time started, but I will give you
my calendar.
A stat. Veronica, check this stat for her book, because this is great. You'll love this one. In 1908, it took a year for a doctor in the United States to get information to a doctor in Europe about a patient so they could study what was going on, because they didn't know about, they were trying to keep people alive. Most of the time the patient died before they could figure it out, but eventually over the years, through boats and letters, today it takes 3 seconds. So if you just think about that, right. 1908 took a year to get information that today we get in 3 seconds. So yeah, that's a great thing to look up.
Well, and just that at one time, the amount of information in the world was basically knowable.
Yeah.
You could pretty much know most things about most things, and that was an educated person. Now, there's no way. So, no way. Give yourselves all a little break around this. And
yeah, a boundary break. I mean, Sam, what's your take on that? Like, let's go back to overwhelm, because that's obviously I have a chapter called the Big O, right? And then you're doing that. But when like I've had to train myself that it's okay for me to not know what's going on in all of the places, and that it's okay for me to just enjoy my day and to be nice to my neighbors, and to really like put the blinders on when it comes to checking certain news or certain social media and such. Like I've had to give myself real permission to just enjoy what's in front of me, because I almost feel guilty that I don't know what's going on the other side of the world. I can't do anything about that.
Right. It's completely outside your sphere of influence. All literally thoughts and prayers are the best we can do for
thoughts and
most
prayers.
Things. And this is an important thing to remember too. Like I think it's still true that most people live within 30 miles of where they were born. It used to be true that we didn't really ever see anybody that didn't look like us, because everybody in 30 miles was part of the same group. So again, things were knowable, things were containable, and now the great news is we see a grillion faces, even just in the course of scanning one newsfeed, we see a grillion faces.
And there's good things, right? I wish. Like last night, I actually did, all right, I'll go in. I call it going in. I'll go in. And I went into YouTube and, the news. I have the premium because my business pays for it. And I refuse to watch. I just look, is there any good news? And there was nothing good literally nothing was going to make my life better whatsoever. from engaging in the news. And so I took a news break from 2004 to 2016, I think it was. And I literally didn't listen to the radio, read the paper back then when you did that, and watch the news. And my life was fine. My business was great. Like nothing was bad, you know? And let's say / if you go to thegoodnewsnetwork.com, they don't pay me to say that. There's so much amazing things happening because we're connected globally. I mean, look at what we're doing right now.
Exactly. This wasn't possible even really 5 years ago, much less 10. So
yeah, so I think looking at the good stuff is really important.
Definitely. But I want to go back to what I think you were getting at earlier too, which is to slow down, to speed up.
Yes.
Taking time to have a meal, taking time to connect with your partner, your family, your loved ones, taking time to make eye contact with people out in the world. You know, this is the thing that I resent most about our phone addictions, is all those little conversations that we used to have, waiting for the bus, sitting in the dentist,
I know,
standing in line at the grocery store. Like we used to just sort of chit chat with one another. Nothing big, you know. Oh, those radishes look nice. Yeah, I'm gonna make a salad. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, what's your recipe?
Right? Yeah, you know, little, you know, this, you know, even people complaining. Oh, the weather's terrible. Or, you know, whatever it is, like a little human interaction, right?
Actually, you know, I'm really lucky. I moved into this apartment complex, which I usually wouldn't do, but it was easy, you know, for a transition alone, me alone with my dog, and it's adorable. And of course, being the New Yorker I am, I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to be any weirdos. And instead, I know all my neighbors. I know my postman's, person's name. Like when I walk my dog, I actually interact, but it's because we're in this like little community, you know? And I was like, wow, I forgot that we used to talk to each other.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Ria says, I needed to hear that today. I didn't feel like writing today, and this session basically give me permission to rest. It's okay to rest. Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Veronica's also put up some links. Those are Amazon affiliate links to Save the Cat and also to my books of poems, if you're interested in those.
Yes.
And she found the statistic. According to Forbes, 90% of the world's data was generated in the last 2 years, with 2.5 quintillion bytes data being created.
Oh, it gives me a headache thinking about that.
Yeah.
And get this, how much of it is true?
Oh, well, there's that. Oh, well, there's that. So great.
By the way, I just heard this great thing that depressed actually means deep rest needed. Just heard that yesterday. And I thought, oh, because I have that, what is it, that strange depression that we get sometimes?
Atypical depression?
Atypical. Yeah. People don't think, like, we come off, you know, we present a certain way, but then behind the scenes, it can really bring you down.
Yeah.
But I thought, oh, deep rest. That's not such a bad idea.
Yeah. No, it's
for creatives need rest.
For sure. And trusting in it. I mean, and we, you know, I definitely have that fear of like, oh no, if I lay down, I'll never get up again. But it's not true. You will.
Yes. Yeah.
Veronica says, welcome to California. We're not nearly as unfriendly or fake as the stereotype. You know, it is true. Certainly in Chicago, people would always talk about LA of like, oh, people are so fake. They act nice, but they're not really nice. My experience is that actually people are in general very nice. All over
me too, actually.
All over the world, people are very nice. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with in LA, so many people work in the entertainment industry, and in the entertainment industry, niceness is a survival mechanism.
Yes.
Because it is long hours, small groups, like it's always 4 a.m. and raining, and you got to shoot like this, and this guy has halitosis, and this person doesn't know their lines, and like, so like nice is so important. So, yeah, my experience is.
I think it's great. I mean, I lived in New York for 21 years, 0 to 21, and then I left, and I never really looked back and barely go to visit, because I really enjoyed the niceness of Portland and California, you know, so I lived in Portland and I always visited California. There's a sharpness to the East Coast, though. There's a boom, boom, boom to the East Coast. That's kind of hilarious.
Oh my gosh, Marcia says, if you put a check mark on a piece of paper for every time you have the impulse to check your phone, it's crazy how much bandwidth it takes up. Oh, Marcia, that's terrifying and so true. So true. So we've got the resistance of distractions. We've got the resistance of fight or flight, of what's going to happen. We've got the resistance of overwhelm.
And decision fatigue is part of the overwhelm. And that's part of the
fatigue. We talk a lot about perfectionism in this group. And it's after the half. Usually we only go a half hour, but since we had Dawn here, I thought we would go a little longer. But does anybody have anything else they want to say or ask about? And Dawn, I'm also curious what you have to say about perfectionism.
So there is no such thing.
Ooh.
I don't think that there's any such thing as perfectionism. I think that that's probably, I would say, one of the number one resistance styles is it has to be perfect before it goes out. And, you know, here's this. So when I had a bet to write a book, and it turned out to be a short book, Write Your True Story. So it's up on, you can get it on Kindle. And I uploaded the wrong one. So I hired a very inexpensive editor. A couple of my friends who were editors and teachers proofed it for me, and I uploaded the wrong one. So there were spelling errors and grammar errors, and I sent it to my list. Well, I made $12,000 in 48 hours. And I was really broke at the time. I was trying to figure out, I was an in-between stage in 2016. What am I gonna do? And I thought, how the heck is that possible? So I asked the two clients that hired me, you know, it was two clients wound up hiring me. They said, oh, your book, I never read digital, this is in 2016, 2017. I never read digital books. I read it all the way through. I know you're the coach for me. And I go, I have a question. They're like, yeah. And eventually I said, so you got the first version. Did you notice this? And I go, yeah, the spelling errors and the grammar. I was curious about that. So did it stop them from hiring me? No. Then when I did my very first interview summit after that on writers, and I think you were on a couple of them, and I really wanted to interview writers, and that was it. You know, a lot of different writing series. The first one I did, there was two typos in Sarah Walton, who's an entrepreneur and writer, her bio, but my VA, we just took her bio and we put it in there and we didn't catch it. You know, they were small. And I got an email from a colleague who had moved to New Zealand, and he says, oh, you're going to call yourself a writing coach? You know, he's like, you have this error and this error on her page. And I eventually I said, hey, let's jump on a call, because we're pals. He goes, yeah. I said, you've been in a standstill. You've been in limbo for 2 years. I was like, are you really stuck in perfectionism still? And he goes, and he was. And I said, you know what Reid Hoffman said, one of the founders of LinkedIn? He goes, what? He goes, he says, if you aren't embarrassed by your first launch, you've launched too late. That's how we are in today's world. Now, if you're making a refrigerator or a car, you should not just throw it out into the world, you know. But if it's a book or a digital piece or, you know, creative piece, start spitting those suckers out, you know, because you're going to find that it's quantity, not quality, which if you talk to some of the best writers, painters, directors, you know, musicians, they're like, oh, you only heard the good stuff, or you only saw the good stuff, you know. So that's, I don't really think that there is such a thing. I think it's a pure human construct to think that something is ever perfect. I mean, to me, God is the only perfect thing. You know, the divine is perfect in him, it's perfection. And loves us for our imperfections. I mean, that's like kind of the interesting spiritual world, which is what I end with, by the way. So I know the whole, if the book ends boring thing. So I end with know the divine. And I was like, ooh, that's where I get to bring in all the really cool woo-woo stuff that's true for creatives. Once you start on that path, there, and if you're consistent, whether you're reading, thinking, or doing, because I think that if you're thinking like an artist, writer, creative, you're processing. The brain is now working for you, you know, and then you start, you know, and then you finish, hopefully. But in that process, if you're consistent, you will find that there are divine forces that come in and actually start making it easier and easier and easier for you. And I forgot the question, but, perfectionism. And so that's the whole point of creativity, whether it's a business, whether it's a book, whatever, the whole point of creativity is imperfection. Scientists find their greatest discoveries by accident. They never find it, 1,000 times to try to make a light bulb, right? And when asked, how does it feel to fail so many times? He said, I thought I just took 1,000 steps. You know, so anyway, that's my take on it. That's my take on it.
I love it. I love it. I've heard that if you're not embarrassed when you ship, you've waited too long, attributed to Matt Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress, actually.
Yeah, see, they steal from each other. Who knows?
We'll have to look it up. But yeah. And Beth says imposter syndrome is a big resistance thing too, right? Yeah. So all of these things that you know, when we think of what is restricting, you know, your interpretation of what is restricting you, because you're probably misinterpreting what's restricting you, right? So we think it's our injuries, we think it's the fact that it needs to be longer, we think it's our perfectionism, we think it's our imposter syndrome, and I just invite you to take another step mentally, like apply a little intellectual rigor. You all are super smart, right? So, you know,
it's a shapeshifter. Resistance is a shapeshifter.
Oh yeah, what's the one where you cut it off and two more appear?
Oh, I forget that one.
Hydra. It's a Hydra.
Yeah. It's
a Hydra. So that like, I feel like an imposter. I feel like I'm not qualified. And then I think to myself, my antidote to that is, well, that may be true, but I know what I know.
Right.
I know what I know. Do I know everything? No.
Yes.
I'm an expert on everything? No. But I know what I know, and I'll say that. I'll know it. I'll ask myself as I'm writing, I'm like, is this true? Do I know this to be true? You know, or is this something that I've maybe heard from other people and I don't actually think that it's true? Like, oh, that's an interesting, you know, like, let's pick it apart a little bit. You know, it's got to be perfect. Is that true?
Right. And by the way, has there been anyone out there less smart, less talented, less skillful who put out work that was not perfect and did well? Yeah, in every single place you could look. So why not give it a shot?
Well, and always when I think about my favorite books, the books that have had the biggest impact on me, my favorite movies, my favorite works of art, do I love them because they're perfect?
Right. Good one. Hit that nail on the head.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
In fact, some of my most favorite ones are decidedly imperfect. They fail in really interesting ways.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Veronica says, zeitgeist, parallel conclusions are an inevitable result of the sheer volume of data we produce on a daily basis. Also, a very freeing thought is if it's not completely 100% original, it's not worth it. Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Well, and that's, you know, this is where we go to my favorite phrase. It's all been said before, but not by you.
But not by you. Exactly. It's all been done before, but not by you.
Marcia says, best advice, Sam, apply intellectual rigor. Fab, put it in your book. Thanks, Marcia. Marcia is an incredibly gifted writer and has written a billion books, both under her name, but also as a ghostwriter. She's written books.
That's awesome. Yeah. Fun.
And Lucy says, love this chat. You ladies are great. Thanks, Luce.
Thanks.
Good. All right. I'm going to have to jump in a second because I've got another call coming up. Anything else, anything they want to say?
If anybody wants anything from me or to have a free chat and, you know, even to know some resources that I can give you, you know, I send people over to other people if I know what you need. You can just go to helpmedawn.com, and helpmedawn.com I've set up so there's a link for writing coaching and there's a link for personal or some business coaching. Or you can just be on my list to find out when the book comes out on May 4th.
Right.
And so if you want to be on the email list to grab the book, it'll be 99 cents for 2 days. I believe my publisher, I did hire a great transcendental publishing company. So you can go to helpmedawn.com if you need anything.
Great. That's great advice. And Joe says, this is wonderful. Thank you both. Dawn, thank you so much for taking your time to be here.
Oh, you're so welcome. I love this. This is fun.
It's fun, right?
You and I just did that with the country move.
I know, that's amazing. So crazy. Thanks as always to Veronica and Lucy for holding up the back end. I'm imagining them as like a cheerleader thing, like they're like,
totally.
But they're absolutely indispensable. You all are the best. Let's do one more breath to close out this circle and send a blessing to Dawn and her book. So yeah, get on her email list so that when it comes out in just next week after, you'll you can get the 99-cent version and share it with your people.
Crack your resistance code.
Crack your resistance code. I love it. Let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome.
Take
Bye.
this, everybody. Bye.